Now, let's take a look at loops and iterations. One more time, we're going to create new files to be able to handle those for Python, JavaScript, and PHP with the right extensions. And just to know that, the more complex and dynamic your programs get, you get to use these control structures. You need to repeat a bunch of tasks or a single task and so on. So Python, JavaScript, and PHP, they all handle it pretty much the same way. The syntax might be different, but the basic concepts are the same. For instance, you have for loops that are definitive. We know the number of times it needs to be iterated, and maybe on top of structures. We also have while loops when we have unknown number of times we need to perform a certain task. So we need to always remember, avoid having infinite loops. Make sure that the condition you're testing at some point in time needs to become false. All right. So simply put, you first start by setting up a counter, creating a variable that needs to be checked. That's one of the good reasons we need variables. So a for loop is very simple for Python. You just use a for and you check the value compared within a range. In this case, the range 5 gives us values from 0 to 4. And we are able to print that value in our output. So again, for Python, it's simple. We can use an F string to output or to concatenate strings. We can also use concatenation, interpolation, and other ways. And it's as simple as that. So again, setting up your counter ahead of time is very important. For while loops, again, we're not sure how many times it's going to run. So we go ahead and set up a new counter. The while loop is just going to run until our particular condition is met. In this case, we're going to print that new counter, which is 10. And then we decrement it by reducing 1 from the actual value during that iteration. So for decrements, we use minus equal to 1 decrement operator. But for other programming languages like JavaScript and PHP, which we're looking at, we can use a different approach or different syntax. So let's go ahead and create a counter in JavaScript and use the same for loop per se. And in this case, though, our counter is actually created within a for loop, I should say. And we have 3 things that are happening within the parentheses. We first of all initiate the counter to start at a particular value, and then we go ahead and specify what value it should stop at when the condition should be met. The condition in this case is in the middle, and we have our step at the end. The step could be an increment or decrement depending on what we are trying to achieve. So in here, we're going to start from 0. We're going to end when it's equal to 5, and we're going to increment from 0 to 5. And on the 5th line, we use the ++ increment operator, which is not available in Python, possibly because of readability issues. Now, for a while loop, you need to, ahead of time, define the counter, define that variable. So we go ahead and say, hey, let our new counter be 10. We start our while loop by checking if that value is less than or equal to 0. And from there, we can go ahead and check that everything works just fine. All right. So PHP, like I said, very similar to JavaScript. We're going to pretty much just copy everything over and make sure that instead of using let for defining our variable, we use our $, and I'll just go ahead and do a quick search and replace, and we should be good. So again, make sure you have your PHP tags. If you're going to write a comment outside the PHP tag, understand that that comment is going to be a comment similar to what you have in HTML. So HTML has a different way of commenting out its code, But when you're within the PHP tag, the comment can use either / or hashtag. So we have a do while loop, which pretty much just runs once before the condition is checked. The do while loop is present in JavaScript as well as PHP, but we don't have any need for a do while loop in Python. Next up, let's talk about modularity, which is very important for all three programming languages. We'll create some files, functions with the right extension, and understand that this helps with the code reuse, also for organization of our code, and to make it very easy to work with. Now, let's start with Python. We first start by defining a function before we can use it. So for function definitions in Python, we use the keyword def. Provide the function with a name, and if the function is using parameters, we pass them within parentheses. We go ahead and use one or more lines of code or statements to actually get the function's body of what needs to be done. It's very similar as well for PHP and JavaScript. JavaScript, again, as well as PHP, use the function keyword instead of the def keyword. And the body of the function is wrapped around curly braces, while for Python, we use our normal indentations. All right. So we just have to remember for JavaScript, we want to make sure that we're using the right variable names, and for PHP we also want to use the right variable names. So variable names in PHP always start with a $sign, but we don't need $signs for the function. And we also need echo for output for PHP. Meanwhile, we use console.log for output in JavaScript. So that's pretty much it. Now for calling the function, it is pretty much identical across the board. You provide the name of the function. The function has arguments that are entered or that are created at definition, and then we can pass in parameters when we're calling the function. So John Doe in this case would be name for all three functions, and that should be it. And functions could be more complicated than that. In our previous videos, I encourage you to subscribe and also watch these videos. It's totally very in-depth on both built-in and creating our own user-defined functions. They could be fruitful or void. I could use one or more parameters. We even have a couple of games from rock, paper, scissors, as well as dice games that we use functions in examples in our Python video. So watch that video. Like I said, subscribe to my channel. There is a lot more that you can gain from it. And also make sure you share it. Thank you. Now, finally, object-oriented programming, or OOP. We've seen this before actually in our previous video on programming paradigms. I encourage you to check out that video as well. Again, we're changing our perspective of how to think altogether. We're thinking in these terms in object-oriented fashion, where everything is an object, which is built from a blueprint, which is a class. So we have a class that acts as a blueprint. We build objects, which are instances of the class. And the key paradigms or the key concepts to understand with OOP are inheritance from a superclass, polymorphism, different ways in which you can have attributes shown, encapsulation, and abstraction. So I'll go ahead and cover OOP detailedly for all three of these languages, because I think we're going over time here. And so far we've already covered everything. This is part 4, I think, of a video series. We looked at which programming language you should choose. We also set up the environment very quickly, tested it out that it's good. We created simple apps with JavaScript, PHP, as well as Python, as we've been doing so far multiple times. and we've looked at the coding anatomy. So I would cap this off with an object-oriented programming video that goes in depth looking at all of these major concepts. Thank you for watching this video, and I encourage you to stick around for more fun, engaging content. It's been Vitus DK. You already know.